We had, yeah, well, we had it split it out. It was like a $125 speeding ticket. That was a big number. So the four of us picked up and split it. You know, she threw in, we threw in.
Really good player. I don't know, my players are wrong there.
Yeah, well, the guy kept. If I didn't, it was on a Friday, and the cop kept telling me to go to the courthouse because we were out of state, so he wouldn't write me a ticket. We had to go to the courthouse on Friday. And the cop kept telling me, you don't want to be here because it'll be Monday before the judge is back here. You're gonna have to spend the weekend in jail. You don't want to be there this weekend.
It's a rough deal.
Well,
So he kind of scared y'all.
it scared me into getting the money. Plus that, I had the car. You know, we were in my mother's Camaro.
Oh, the yellow.
Yellow Camaro. Yeah, I was doing. I think that was when the top speed was 70, and I was doing 80.
I was thinking 90.
I think it was 80. The cop took me back. You know, he took me back in his car. The first car said, "We're going to see the."
Well, I would love to be able to tell all of that.
The reason we told you that was 10 miles over the speed limit and then it's different tax.
I was thinking that was 20.
If it was under 10, then you would let it over 10 is a lot more. So
Hello and welcome to this memorial service that celebrates the life of Jim Bradham. I'm Mike Bradham, Jim's brother, and I really hope we can spend this time, little time we have, honoring Jim, a little time to share our grief, and then just being together while we do that. There's a order of service in the back. I don't know if everybody got one, but I noticed some people were getting them, some people weren't. So there's a cart back there if you need it. And speaking of the service, this is going to be we're going to have people share. We're going to have a little music. We're going to have some poems. Some people are going to share from a few memories of earlier life with Jim, some later life, and then we'll have another section that's open. You can share from right where you are. So. I know that can be difficult, but don't worry about it. If, we weep a little bit, it's very appropriate. I'm up here, you might see me do the same. So really would just like to spend this time, honoring Jim, celebrating his life. And if you can do that by sharing a few words, that'd be wonderful. A little more housekeeping. After the service in the building across the courtyard, we're going to have some food together and some more time to be together and share some more memories of Jim. So as we get started, let me pray for us. Please pray with me. Our God of love, we ask you to hold us this day in your peace. Shelter us as we remember Jim and celebrate his life. Gather us in stories and words, and in the comfort that we can provide to each other. We're grateful for the love and care that Jim gave us so freely. We're grateful for his life. Please help us this day to find ways to incorporate our experiences of Jim into our living. And then as we remember him, he can go with us. We ask you, though, now to embrace us each in your care, we pray. Amen. So our first reading here is from Matthew 11. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jessica's going to read this poem. Jim Sneeze.
When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory is suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us. They existed. They existed. We can be and be better. For they existed.
So we put the obituary online, and I was pleasantly surprised. A few days later, I saw some words by Art Chandler, an old friend of Jim's from high school, and he's here with us. And I was just a little kid the last time I saw Art, and great, just fun memories of life as a kid with an older brother and his friends. But Art said some really some words that I wanted to read, so I'm going to go ahead and read those now. Jim's spirit will always be alive with me as long as I will be alive, and perhaps afterwards. Our friendship goes back to the mid-'60s when we were both youngsters. We became friends when Jim and his family lived in the Timber Grove neighborhood, and my family lived in Lazy Brook across from 18th Street in Houston. We shared mutual interests in fishing as well as hunting. He was my best friend at Waltrip High School until my family moved to Clear Lake. Jim and I went to our first concert together in 1967 and saw the up-and-coming musical group, the Jefferson Airplane. We continued our friendship at the University of Houston and became fraternity brothers at Delta Chi Fraternity. Although we lost touch with each other as the years went by. We got back in touch a few years ago when a mutual friend and fraternity brother we had passed away. I'm extremely thankful that this occurred because I realized how strong our friendship really was. I admire Jim's beauty and soul and wish that myself and the rest of the world were more like him. Although I am very sad presently, I hope it's only temporarily because I know how much he has enhanced my life. I'm very thankful for Jim's caring wife, Mary Carol, and wish her and Jim's family an enriched life ahead. What a wonderful friend and human being. My lifelong compadre, Jim Bradham. May God bless his soul.
Well, most of you don't know me. I'm Becky Comstock, and my connection to Jim is through Mary Carol. My husband, John, was Mary Carol's first cousin, and the two of them grew up more like brother and sister than like cousins. And if you're trying to get the connection between them, Mary Carol's mom, Virginia, and John's dad, Carol, were sister and brother. And John and his parents spent a lot of time at Grandma Comstock's house, where Mary Carol grew up with her mom. So anyway, John and Mary Carol were very, very close before I ever knew either one of them, and we're still close when I met John. So to go back to before I met Jim and Mary Carol was recently telling me, and if I don't have this story straight, feel free to stand up and correct me, okay? Okay. Or just sit back and laugh because I got it wrong. Anyway, before I met Jim and Mary Carol was recently telling me about when she first met Jim, or when she first knew Jim. Apparently Jim was one of 3 potential suitors in her life at the time. And John was giving her some brotherly advice, okay? Am I good so far? Okay. So, as she recalled, John's BS meter was always pretty accurate. Anybody who knew John. And he had a real knack for reading people and their intentions pretty well. Now I know that there's another word for that. It's called discernment in church circles. But anyway, John and his BS meter worked really, really well. So anyway, what John had to say about Jim was that he believed that Jim was now I'm going to cry, that Jim was a really good man, and that she ought to stick with him and get rid of the other 2, right? Fortunately, she took his advice. She stuck with Jim, who did turn out to be a really, really good man, and she ditched the other 2, right? And the rest is history. So that's how I knew Jim, was because he and Mary Carol stayed together, and then so I got to meet both of them at the same time. So I will also say, some of you, I don't think very many of you, but there are a few of you who knew John, my husband, way back when, and you'll believe this. I'll also say that John never had a lot of respect for many other men, because that BS meter, I guess. But he always had a great amount of respect for Jim. So much so that he asked him to be his best man when we got married. So you might not have realized that Jim was John's best man when we got married. And but he respected Jim for all the same reasons that you'll be hearing about today, all the wonderful things about Jim. There was never any question about his motives, because Jim was consistently honest, trustworthy, dependable, kind, reliable, responsible, hardworking, had integrity and all those other words that you'll be hearing to describe him. And a great example of the kind of people that Jim and Mary Carol have always been is one from my daughter, Rebecca, who's with me today, was recalling from when she was in nursing school, she accidentally slipped and broke her kneecap in several places and had to have surgery on it. Not a good memory. And so she ended up having to sit out a semester of nursing school, and pretty much all she could do was sit on the couch with her leg propped up, and could not do very much of anything else for herself. So, much to her surprise, Jim and Mary Carol showed up one day. She may have known you were coming first, I'm not sure, but anyway, Jim and Mary Carol showed up at her house and brought her some food, and next thing she knew, she heard something and looked outside and realized Jim was outside mowing her grass. So, those of you who knew Jim would know that wouldn't have a hard time believing that, okay? That's just what they do and have always done. So, he also enjoyed, as y'all talked about before, enjoyed getting outdoors and having fun. And I don't know if any of you have seen, but you might somewhere have seen a picture of Jim with a stringer of fish and another guy smiling from ear to ear, and that's John, after the two of them had a great day fishing and enjoying each other's company all day. And I have another fond memory of the four of us going to Huntsville State Park. Do you remember that? And we swam across the lake at the park, the four of us together, swimming across the lake together. And yeah. And that was in the late 70s before any of us had kids, So we didn't go swimming across the lake and dragging kids with us. Okay, promise. But anyway, I'll wrap this up by saying to Mary Carol, I'm so glad you took John's advice and brought Jim into your family. And I'm just going to say, I'm sorry, I never heard the kayak story, so I hope somebody will tell that today, okay? I'm waiting to hear that one, okay? Thank you.
Before we share some more memories, let me read from Romans 8. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or peril, or sword? No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am sure that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. And then a poem. His love abides. Often we are found in our grief and comforted, calmed by some kindness, brought alive again by beauty that catches us undefended. Even when the sun is most thin and far, even at the hour the storm is at its height, we can go through. Renewal next with sorrow. Love abides, ever beyond anger, beyond death. We are held in an embrace invisible but infinite, moving with all creation, between wholeness and fragmentation, moving always toward the one. Small joys and great sorrows pass, and we, with steps uncertain, move on to whatever is next, but continually seen, heard, held by life infinite and remote, intimate and abiding. Love, do not let us go. Amen. All right, Jamie and Trey.
I'm Jamie Turner, Jim's youngest daughter, and wanted to share a few things about my dad if I can get through this without crying. That's my husband, Trey. Anyway, my father was the kindest man I've ever known. He loved us, provided for us, taught us things, but tried to learn from us too. One of my earliest memories when we all shared a car, and Dad worked at the post office downtown. We just shared a minivan, and he worked a late shift, so he was there from 3 to 11, and we would get to stay up late and go pick him up. Every day, the first thing he would do after getting in the car was pray. He had a very solid relationship with God, and it showed. To this day, whenever I talk to God, it's when I'm in my car, and I know it's because my dad modeled that for me. When I was very young, he taught me karate and how to fall down, which helped. Really important, but it helped out a lot later on when we did competitive artistic roller skating. My dad always wanted to be involved in what we were doing, so he threw on a pair of skates and learned how to skate dance with me, which as an adult I now realize how difficult that can be when your center of gravity is a little bit higher, and for a over 6 foot tall man to learn how to skate was, something just so he could skate with me. Over the summers we would go to the lake a lot and the beach, and I remember he would always swim us past the breakers, and I would be a little bit scared, but he'd always put me on his shoulders and I instantly felt safe. As I got older, he taught me how to fix things, or tried to, and change my oil, and thankfully I have an amazing husband to do that for me now. He taught me how to work hard even when people weren't looking. He taught me how to forgive and the strength of kindness. He taught me how to pray and the power of words. He could fix anything and build anything. He was always there, always supportive, always proud of me. I'm grateful he got to know my daughter, and heartbroken that he won't be here to see her grow up. He loved to draw, and so did she. I'm hopeful she will remember coloring with Pawpaw, and we will make sure she knows what amazing Pawpaw he was. I know you're gone, but you'll always be with me, reminding me to pray and ask God for help, reminding me to be kind and forgive, and reminding me to check my tires and get my car inspected. We've been very open with our 3-year-old daughter, Winnie, over here, talking about how Papa isn't here anymore, and how we don't get to see him. And while she doesn't understand death or existence at all, and we've never told her what happens when you die, she painted a beautiful picture of where Papa is now, and she told us he's in the sky, and he's past the stars, and Papa has wings. And that gives me peace knowing you are with who you're always so close to, and you have wings. You're always with us in our hearts and our memories, but now you have wings.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Ray. I only had the chance to know Jim for about 4 years, so say I'm young here. But I wanted to go ahead and ask you guys, coming from my heart, in the context of my relationship with Jim, do y'all know the dimensions of a proper wooden 2x4? Because you know who did? They're 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. Just adding on to that. So yeah, Jim would know precisely that, and all of the other, the most famous of wooden construction materials out there since the invention of the foot. And when I say foot, I mean 12 inches. And interestingly enough, Jim would know, and he'd be very, very happy to tell you, there's 192 sixteenths of an inch in a foot. So this gives you the context and overall picture of my relationship with Jim. I wasn't necessarily close with him, but after meeting his family, Jamie, and talking to him for a while, I've come to believe he is the nicest man that I've ever met in my life. The most caring, really humble, and grateful that I get to be up here to talk about him. Someone mentioned something about a boat. It's interesting because Jamie mentioned this too years ago, and I thought it was hilarious. I don't know the boat story. Someone please tell us the boat story. So we're driving one day. I don't know what we were talking about, but Jamie tells us that we used to have a boat in our living room, and I was like, I love your dad. Jim liked to draw boats. He drew boats on little napkins. I mean, Mary Carol, did y'all ever own a boat other than the one that was in your living room? And that wasn't even a proper boat. Jim liked to draw maps. Sounds like a terribly dorky thing, but you know, I'm an engineer and I can relate to that. That's super exciting stuff to me. One time, we realized we both had interest in firearms, hunting, shooting, particularly just target practice. And me being a complete dork and Jim being super excited about specificity and very technical things, we both started shooting air rifles. I got him an air rifle for his for Christmas one year. Me, again, being an engineer, talked to him about the dynamics, the structural dynamics of an air rifle with respect to those of a firearm. They're completely different. Without going into too much detail, Jim made me a beanbag specifically catered to those particular problems that an air rifle has that makes it inaccurate. When I say a beanbag, it was to rest this particular rifle with these particular problems on it and shoot as clear as it could. And he just made that from scratch. I own one of these things too. I bought for hundreds of dollars, but it's not as good as this damn beanbag. All right, I had some terribly funny stuff to read to you, but we don't have all day. I just really want to drive home the fact that Jim's an incredibly nice and caring person. We've really lost somebody. I'd like to add to what Jamie mentioned about trying to explain death to your 3-year-old daughter. It's very difficult, but you know, at the same time, it's also great because I get to explain death to my 3-year-old daughter. The alternative is not having to. I don't know that reality. What our daughter thinks is that Jim is in the sky. He's looking down. It's in the stars. Papa is in the stars. And so, with that, I thought reading the chorus of a David Bowie song would be appropriate right now to close out. And so, those familiar with 1972 Starman, right after Ziggy Stardust, y'all might know these lyrics, but I'm not going to sing them. I'm just going to read them. So, there's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'll blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He told us not to blow it because he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children lose it, let the children use it, and let all the children vote. Thank you for coming.
I like the Starman. Jim liked things in that vein. He definitely did. I'm sure that's why it showed up. Well, like I said earlier, I'm Mike, Jim's little brother. I'm 15 years younger than Jim. So I just never knew a time without Jim. He was always there. He was my first roommate. He really was. We were in a 10 by 10 room, little toddler, and what was Jim, maybe 16, 15 years old? You know, if you know Jim, what a nice person. I've heard nice a lot today so far. He was willing to put up with stuff, right? So he was willing to put up with a little toddler in his room as a 16, 17, 18-year-old. And by all indications, he was fine with it. We had fun in there. I had great memories of that. So he was always there, but he was my superhero. He really was. And if you can imagine that, little kid, this 6'3" brother, from my short perspective, it looked like his head was touching the ceiling. It looked like he had to, crouch down to get through doorways. So, in conversations with friends, I was, always talking about my brother, what he did, how fast he ran, what he could lift, what he could do, all these things, I remember he could, he's always into various exercising, right? Different kinds. But I remember I used to get on his shoulders and he'd do push-ups, and, it kind of seems remarkable to me, that he would do that. And I don't know if you remember how thin-framed Jim was, but a very strong guy to be able to do that. So lots of good interactions there. It showed that I still really looked up to him in high school even. Jim had this, you can see pictures of it out there in the foyer, his old 66 Mustang, aqua-ish color. I had one that looked almost just like it, I was just trying to be like Jim, I think. So he was that to me. Still look up to him. So we've heard a little outdoors talk. As Jim got older, he didn't really like going outdoors so much, as much as he did when he was younger. But when he was young, he was always fishing or hunting or doing something to do with that. He taught me fishing knots that I still use. I have really fond memories of fishing with him down below the spillway in Lake Houston at the Galveston jetties. It was some really good times there. And I remember those stories, Becky, wherever you are, of him fishing with Johnny, telling me stories of fishing with Johnny and shark fishing and kind of scary stories about sharks coming around and taking the bait or taking the fish off the stringer and that sort of thing. So he loved doing those things. I remember as a kid, and I guess he did these things, but it seemed like this was something that was always present too. We always had targets in the backyard. There was a big straw target. We would shoot bows we'd shoot arrows into. We had bows, and we'd shoot into that. I set up targets for pellet guns, for BB guns in the backyard. In fact, I remember I don't know if my dad, or I think it was probably Jim, because he was always inquisitive into new things about these things. So he found some plastic bullets, rubber bullets, I don't know what they were. But he decided it was a good idea to set up a target in the hallway. We had a long hall in these ranch houses, set up a target in the hallway with rubber bullets, and we were target practice in the house, which, how in the world did we do that, right? I was pretty young. Now I wonder how in the world we got away with that. But I know my mother wasn't very happy, and probably me with the bad aim. There's a hole in that door, I remember, by the end. So I don't know if we've talked about Jim's love for animals, but it's pretty evident. And one thing I remember when we were kids, he rescued a blue jay. There was, he's determined, I don't know, just knowing what I know now, we probably shouldn't have picked him up, but we picked him up and figured he was abandoned. And Jim, he builds things. So he built this amazing cardboard cage, 3 feet tall, 2 feet square probably, with the screen mesh around the front. It was really nice. And we fed the blue jay sogged up dog food, and he just got fat and happy. Really did. His name was Jeremiah, and we would like to sing about Jeremiah was a Blue Jay and a very good friend of mine, and I'm not really sure if the rest of that applies, but we just did it. Seemed like the thing to do. So we let Jeremiah fly around the house. He'd land on the dog's back. For some reason, our dog would let him do that. He'd land on our finger. He preferred to be up in we had a taxidermy deer head in the house, and he loved to hang out in the antlers of the deer. That's where he liked to be. But that's just a picture of Jim and his love for animals and things that happen because of his love for animals. We like to go on long bike rides. So I'm a little kid, and he would take me on these long bike rides. We'd ride to Herman Park. We lived in the northwest side of town, Timber Grove. Ride to Herman Park. He'd take me in the bayou. He didn't really like riding in the bayou that much. It's not like now. There's a little concrete in the bottom. The sewage would go across into the bayou, and you'd have to ride your bike through it. It was kind of nasty, but we could go long ways. You'd ride in the bayou and go long ways and pop up, and you'd be somewhere amazingly different. And he would take me on these journeys, and that was fun for a little kid to do. So I don't have the boat story. Who's going to do the boat story? Somebody's going to have to get up and do the boat story in a little while. But I did hear some handyman stories, so that was good. But if you can get those ready, maybe if somebody's got some of those for later, I would love to hear some of those. So I'm going to read this verse from Psalm 91. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. So this is one of Jim's favorite psalms. It speaks of resting in God's shadow. Resting in God's shadow. The imagery is, of course, of God taking care of us, keeping us from harm. As you read more into that, you can see there's a lot of harm impending on the way, and God's protecting us from it. It speaks of God being with us, speaks of God being near us. And if you knew Jim, I don't think you'd be surprised that Jim sometimes did get overwhelmed by life. But he was able to find encouragement. He was able to find rest when he was overwhelmed by looking at God, as you see here in these verses. His faith in God's care helped him through times when he was struggling. Even in this last year, Jim was able to rest in God's care when the mesothelioma was ravaging his lungs. When things got bad, he even then expressed a peace about his life and what was to come. Jim was ever the optimist, just optimistic about what could happen. Always positive about these things, and that was a wonderful feature of him. He was always optimistic that he would get better, and that's kind of hard for me as his brother, kind of deal with. It seemed like a little barrier in a way, but as I've had time to reflect on that, it's been over a month now, and I really think that optimism was his way of just expressing his confidence in God. Confidence that God is with him and that God is caring for him, even though his body was breaking down. As hard as it was to watch him deteriorate, really encouraging to see the confidence that he had in God's love for him. So, how we move forward after losing Jim is going to be different for every single one of us. Because of our experiences with Jim, we're different. But we have to, I just want us all to know that we're not alone. It's going to benefit us greatly to take time to be together, just like we're doing now, but not only now, but take time to remember, take time to grieve, take time to share stories, take time to laugh, to weep. And even though it's painful, we really need to welcome those memories that they come, and the emotions that are inevitably going to bubble up, but that's just going to happen. We have to step through that. So as I do that, I'm going to remember my childhood hero. I'm going to remember the animal lover. I'm going to remember the boat lover, the fixer of broken things, And beyond that, the planner of things even more, right? We just love to plan things and write things down and plan them all. So it's important to us. It's important for us to welcome our grief. You can get a picture of that. And I want to welcome grief because Jim matters to me. And because you're here, Jim matters to you too. And as we grieve, we have to remember all the times of joy we had with Jim. And the joy, if we can embrace that and remember that. And I know as Jamie was speaking, it was really bringing back some of that for me. The good things that Jim did and the fun times we had and that joy, let it wash over us and let that lift us up, the joyful memories with Jim. So as we do spend a little time after the service together, we'll have a little time to eat together. But also as we go from here in the future, I want to encourage you to keep encouraging each other with stories of Jim's life and your life with him. And then as we remember Jim, we can do what Jim did, right? We can rest in God's shadow. We can depend on his presence with us as we are present with each other and remember him. So we can step into this time we can share a little with each other if people have memories of Jim that they want to share. And I'm going to be kind of slow here and take my time, and if people want to ponder that, what they want to say, that's great. Is there anybody that'd like to say anything? Yes, please. Wow. Tell me your name. I haven't met you. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Anyone else? Both stories? Art. Oh. Was it on 12th Street? Was it on 12th Street? That big engine caught up to him. Yeah, the Galaxy. That's great. Sure. Friends since when? Yes. Very encouraging, Jim. Jim's always very encouraging. Wanted to share what encouraged him. Anybody else? So he worked all night on the floors and yeah, he did. That shows up in the family sometimes. Yeah. Any more? We're not going to get the boat in the living room, the kayak in the living room story from anybody. Yeah, I guess that's the thing. Yeah. Right. Is it still there? Trey, you've got a project. Or maybe Hayden, you got a project. I don't know. No. Okay. I'll wait for more. There are more. Don't be shy. Well, we can talk more after the service. Didn't miss anybody today. Oh, we did? Well, yeah. I remember him doing that. Yeah. He was. Yeah.
Thank you to everybody that shared. Appreciate that very much. If you would look in your bulletin, there is a unison reading there. And if you would read that with me, that would be fantastic. Listen to what God is saying to us. You are my child. You are written on the palm of my hand. You are hidden in the shadow of my hand. I have molded you from the secret of the earth. I have knitted you together in your mother's womb. You belong to me. I am yours. You are mine. I have called you from eternity, and you are the one who is held safe and embraced in love from eternity to eternity. You belong to me. I hold you safe, and I want you to know that whatever happens to you, I am always there. I am always there. I am always there. I will always be there and hold you in my embrace. You are mine. You are my child. You belong to my home. You belong to my intimate life, and I will never let you go. I will be faithful to you. And now we're going to sing a choral benediction. The girls and I are going to start it off, and then we're going to ask y'all to join in. You can join in as early as the chorus, or you can wait till the second verse. We've printed the words right below that reading. And then after the service in the fellowship hall, we're going to have the meal and appeal, which was one of Jim's favorite comfort foods. And we would like to ask you all to stay and enjoy a meal and appeal and take some time to spend with Mary Carol.